how much Bitcoin do you need to retire? We're going to break that down today, and we're going to take some different assumptions into play here. It's I think, one of my favorite videos to make, and it's a lot of the time some of the viewers' favorite videos, one of your favorite videos to watch, because it is fun, especially in a bear market, to think about where we could be years from now. It's really difficult to go through the news every single day and just hear bad news after bad news. You want to hear some good news every once in a while, but you want to, of course, keep a level head, right? Don't put all your money into the market, all your dry powder into the market at one time, because can be very difficult to weather these downturns if you put everything in. So we're going to try to keep it nice and short. A couple pieces of news. Again, just like all these different exchanges going down, I think it's important to have cold storage. I'll put links to Trezor underneath the video. Now, with that in mind, if you want to do some non-spot trading, so if you don't want to hold Bitcoin, but you just want to trade back and forth, Margex is a good place to do that. If you're a trader or you want to use some margin, of course, only use that sparingly, only if you are an experienced trader or know the risks. So I'll put links to both those underneath the video. And let's take a look here. So a lot of people like to make Bitcoin complicated. Let's just look at this though. 2011 went up, 2012 went up, 2013 went up, 2014 down year. Up, 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 down, up, 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 down. 2023 probably will be an up year, right? We've seen a massive bear market. So typically what we've seen in the past is just one bad year. It's a big bear market. And then the rest of the time it is positive. So with that in mind, let's look at how much Bitcoin you'd need, because now we are in this down year. So this is typically a good time to be accumulating. Now, if you want to know how much Bitcoin you need to know four things, especially if you want to retire on this, right? How much do you spend? How much do you want to spend? Because that will determine how much Bitcoin you need. You also need to know how high Bitcoin will go, which we don't know that, but we're going to make some assumptions. We're going to change it. We have three different scenarios. When do you want to retire? So obviously, if you want to retire next year, you're going to need a lot of Bitcoin. If you want to retire 10 years from now, you'll need a lot less, assuming Bitcoin's price goes up. And then the fourth question we have to ask ourselves is, do you sell the Bitcoin or do you hold? Because there is a significant amount of volatility. And one thing that we're going to be using is the 4% rule, basically saying that you can sell 4% of your assets to cover your daily living. And then the rest of your portfolio will continue to grow enough that you can continue to sell 4% a year. Now, that's typically thought of, or people typically use that for a more of a diversified stock portfolio. It's definitely different with Bitcoin as well, because if you sell when the market's down significantly, right, you're getting rid of a lot more Bitcoin. But if you sell at the top, you're getting rid of a lot less Bitcoin. So the more volatile an asset, kind of the safer you have to be with that withdrawal rate. But also, if it goes up, it's way easier to get a lot of wealth, and then you can spend a little bit more as well. So we just have to take that into account. We're just going to use the 4% rule, though, to make it easy. So this first scenario is a little bit odd. It's not very likely based on history, but we're going to assume that you invest $5,200 in 2022. And I realize that's a lot for some people, but the fact is, if you want to retire in a short period of time, you can't invest $100, then plan to retire and make sizable amounts of passive income later. So we're going to assume that you put in $100 a week every week for the next 20 years. And this is the part of the scenario that isn't very likely, but this is just as an example, and then we'll get into the realistic ones. We're going to assume that Bitcoin's price just goes up consistently. You just continue to dollar cost average in. By the end of 20 years, we're going to assume that it's about the size of gold now, the market cap of gold. Now, keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of inflation. So I think this is a very conservative scenario to assume that Bitcoin's going to be at 670,000 in 20 years. I think that that's really low. And by the end, you're barely buying any Bitcoin. You're buying like 1/100th of a Bitcoin a year. And by the end of this, you have about 1.74 Bitcoin, which at that point would be worth $1.17 million. Now, of course, there's inflation, so keep that in mind. This would only get you about $47,000 a year in passive income if you're taking the 4% rule into account. I don't think that's enough money for most people, and I think this is a little bit too conservative of a scenario. It also assumes that it's just linear, which I don't think is very likely, but it is kind of conservative in that way as well, that we don't even pass the prior all-time high until 2030, right? But that also means that you're getting more Bitcoin while it's low. So anyone that's running these kinds of scenarios, this isn't very likely. So let's move on to the next one here. We're going to assume that you continue to invest the same amount here.
So you invest $5,200 a year, but Bitcoin's price does more like what it does now, right? It goes, it's low, it kind of doubles for a year maybe, then it takes off, and then it comes down even more in the bear market, goes up a little bit, and then takes off. And we're going to assume that you invest $5,200 just like you're doing now, but we're going to assume also that you don't want to wait for 20 years to retire. So you invest through 2036. By then, we're saying a $1.26 million Bitcoin, which would be the highest in all of this. So 1.26 million, of course, there's going to be inflation. So this might be closer to maybe 1 million or maybe even less than that, like 700,000 now. But in this scenario, since it's so volatile and the price is going up and down and up and down, right, you're not being able to buy as much. So you get 1.08 Bitcoin, but by the end, you're at $1.36 million retirement income of $55,000. Still not very likely to be enough for many people. And also, some people just want to retire faster. So let's take a look at a more aggressive scenario. Let's say you're able to invest $15,000 a year. Again, I know that's a lot for some people, but if you want to retire in 10 years, right, you're probably going to have to invest a lot of money. So that would get you 0.86 Bitcoin. Let's assume that Bitcoin's price does the same thing as the last scenario, but we don't get this last top, right? We're just going to stop at 2032. So 10 years from now, $759,000 Bitcoin. I think that's pretty likely. I realize for some traditional people, they say that that's way too high, but the fact is that that would be just about a 10x from the last peak over 10 years. I think that that's pretty standard for a lot of people that are in crypto. They think that Bitcoin will be 750,000 to a million by the end of this decade. So we're saying 2 years after that. Now, in this scenario, you're investing a lot more at the beginning. That's really important. $15,000 will get you a lot more Bitcoin now. You're able to get up to 2.88 Bitcoin. So by the time that you are at the end of this, you have $2.2 million. That would get you almost $90,000 in retirement income. Now, keep in mind that that still is going to be inflated away. So 10 years of inflation at 3% or so, this might be closer to $60,000 or $70,000 worth of retirement income. But you can continue to increase this. The more that you can invest now, the better, assuming Bitcoin goes up over time. Personally, I think you'd try to shoot for like 3 to 4 Bitcoin if you really were trying to get a significant amount. Now, keep in mind, right, you should have other investments too. You're probably still going to be working at least for fun or something like that. But that's just to run you through some numbers to show you how much Bitcoin you could really accumulate in this type of scenario. Of course, I'm not saying to go out and buy a ton of Bitcoin. You have to do your own research. If you believe in Bitcoin and you think it's going to be here for a long time, you think it's going to go up in value, again, this, or at least around this value or around this time is probably the best time to be buying if you're looking to hold it for a long time. Of course, we could fall 10, 20, 30, 50%, but this bear market is probably lower than any bear market we'll have in the future. Just like right now, we're still sitting much higher than we sat at last bear market. The bear markets continue to move up, so it's harder and harder to buy a significant amount of Bitcoin in them. Now, let me know your thoughts on this underneath the video. Let me know if you think I should do more of these, maybe with other altcoins, or whether you think that this is just too much hopium. Let me know in the comment section. Again, you can check out Margex, and you can also check out the link to some cold storage with Trezor underneath the video. They're giving you free shipping for another week. So December 15 is the last time that you can get free shipping, but I would highly suggest buying it even after that because of the fact that everyone needs a cold storage wallet solution. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.